Dinosaur pictures in the back. Go. Big dinosaur skulls. Us standing next to giant dinosaurs. The big bones everywhere. That's what we're here for, except it's not. This is the disease that killed dinosaurs. Once dinosaurs became a thing, you don't hear about the amoeba anymore.
Right.
They just don't ever talk about them in the same thing, because dinosaurs are cooler, but the Jurassic and the Jurassic periods have had to have little creepy crawly, skin rashes.
They had germs, for sure, back then.
They had to have
germs
them, right?
existed back then. They were just different.
Yeah, so this is super fascinating to me. My wife is here.
Do you think we're going to get to hear dinosaur sneezes? Do you think dinosaurs got colds?
They most definitely got...
Did they get, were they ever stuffy, talking to their wives and they sound like this?
Well, I don't know if they have mucus in their noses.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have nose mucus. That's a very good question. I would say probably.
Lindsay Nikole.
Plenty.
If you were to ask someone what their least favorite part of the natural world is, they would probably answer with something that has to do with disease. Malaria, cancer, COVID, etc. Diseases are everywhere and can be nearly impossible to get rid of.
Not even close. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not even close.
What's one of your
annoying babies? I despise annoying children. Oh, God. And I'm so happy I'm out of the range of ages where kids just walk up and talk to me randomly.
Right.
It's very... if a child talks to me, I'm like, you think I look like your dad, right? Before it was every kid everywhere is like, that's a play buddy guy.
Right.
I hated it.
I hate traffic.
Oh, man. That's the worst part.
Yeah.
I'll take a cold over traffic any day.
I dislike traffic a lot. But also, she said it has something to do with disease. And I would just like to talk about the man on our flight back home from New York City who kept coughing violently and disgustingly.
That man needed a lozenge.
Directly behind my husband.
He stopped covering his mouth halfway through the flight.
He stopped covering his mouth and wasn't wearing a mask. And if I could get my hands on that man.
Terrible flight.
And as you would probably assume, they have been a component of ecosystems for millions and millions of years. A couple weeks ago, I got a comment on one of my videos asking for more information on prehistoric
diseases. Wow, what a good question.
At least diseases before Homo sapiens. Do we have evidence of these? If so, what? Could this have led to some extinctions of species that seem to have been going well? And I thought, you know what? I've never really looked into that, but I should. I had come across an article about a year ago of a sauropod with the sniffles, but that was about it. And I had the flu last week. I had a fever for 3 days.
I'm so sorry.
During those days that are now a blur to me, I thought, what better time than now to make this video? Maybe on the nose. But anyway, turns out diseases have shown up in the fossil record in some pretty unusual ways, and kind of all over the map. I'm going to introduce you to a little sample platter of them, specifically during the age of the dinosaurs. So buckle up. Let's first get the general information out of the way. First off, disease is a very broad term. I genuinely can't think of anything more broad than the word disease. It refers to so many things. The simplest way to define it is something that leads to a disorder or disruption in the structure or function of an organism. And a particular disease has a particular set of symptoms and causes. It's so broad, it actually drives me nuts. And there's no way to narrow that scope down for the purpose of this video because we're all over the place today. So, we're just gonna leave it at that. Within paleontology, scientists have a name for the study of diseases within fossil specimens. It's called paleopathology. Very nice, very easy. Coined in 1893 when scientists started to take a deeper look into the fractures they had once diagnosed in the bones of extinct animals. Spoiler alert, they were sometimes in fact not fractures. Only a handful of scientists work exclusively on paleopathology, so a lot of diagnosing takes place with a group of experts from all over the map, doctors get called in and stuff. And as you would probably assume, one of the easiest groups of diseases to identify in fossilized remains are diseases that affected the bones of that animal. For example,
osteoporosis,
bone tumors, and bone cancer. Let's start off there. These are documented pretty well in the vertebrate fossil record, with the earliest documented case coming from the Carboniferous period, about 300 million years ago. A bone tumor on a reef-finned fish, and another one on the jaw of a Gorgonopsian that was alive in the Permian about 255 million years ago. These earlier documented cases were benign, or non-cancerous. Benign tumors seem to be older and much more common than malignant, cancerous ones, with some of the earliest cancerous examples coming from the age of the dinosaurs. Exhibit A, a dinosaur named Centrosaurus with osteosarcoma, a type of bone cancer. It was alive about 76 million years ago in what is now Alberta, Canada. And despite the diagnosis, seems to have been killed in some sort of tropical storm/flood, along with its herd of over 1,000 individuals.
Damn.
And no, this is not evidence of the flood. It could have been some huge drought too. but mass grave site of a massive herd in an area that likely had tropical storms, you can assume a flood. So all these fossil specimens of this whole herd have been kept at the Royal Tyrrell Museum in Canada. Considering such a large sample size, scientists decided to do a little digging. I'm on a roll today, and see if they could identify anything out of the ordinary. They recognized a shin bone of a particular specimen that seemed to be a little off, and possibly displayed signs of bone cancer. A large mass at one of the ends of the bone had been previously labeled as a healed fracture, but when they compared it to a normal Centrosaurus calf bone and a human calf bone with osteosarcoma, they realized there were signs of osteosarcoma. Got some x-rays and CT scans and shit, which led to a positive diagnosis. And it was advanced.
That must be so freaky to like be working with this fossil, because they work with them for years, probably multiple projects at a time, and they'd be like, oh, that's just a broken leg, and you move on.
Yeah, you're like, what else?
And then you swing back around and start putting together the pieces like, this motherfucker had tumor. He had a big-ass cancerous tumor.
I also think it's crazy that, like, when we talk about cancer now, we don't really think about it in terms of, like, cancer has been around, bro.
Yeah.
Cancer's been around for a minute.
Millions of years. Yeah, man.
Looking at the scans, the scientists were able to trace the cancer from the knee all the way to the ankle. So
Jesus.
It's likely spread to other parts of its body, but there's just no way to know for sure with just a shin bone. So this likely would have led to the death of this individual, if not
eventually
for the flood. Another case of osteosarcoma, this is actually one of the oldest cases discovered, came from an early relative to turtles. No shell yet, called Papacelis. Absolutely darling little guy. They were alive about 240 million years ago during the Triassic, and got to about 8 inches long. Scientists noticed a growth on the left femur of this fossil, found in Germany in 2013, took some micro CT scans of it, and diagnosed it with osteosarcoma. And more recently in 2021, a hadrosaur that was alive 70 million years ago was also diagnosed with osteosarcoma. Bonapartosaurus, alive in what is now Argentina. The fossil was discovered in the 1980s, and at the time, scientists did notice something unusual about one of the metatarsals, i.e. foot bone, but it was thought to be a possible fracture. Turns out it wasn't. It was osteosarcoma, once again.
Now you see a theme here where they just go, unusual, fracture.
Yeah.
It was a healed fracture. That's what led the bulb. We're done researching.
Well, I mean, and I feel like when you're dealing with fossils and stuff and things that are so old, it's so easy to just write everything off as like from the age, from this, from that. You know what I mean?
Until
like
you
the
spend
age
more
of the
time
bones,
with it.
until you spend more time with it.
And that's what they mean by like her shirt that says that we know of, right?
Yeah.
That's what they mean by like science is always advancing. Like if anyone saw that probably for years and years, they all would accept fracture, healed fracture, and it makes scientific sense. Just as much as now I believe her saying now we do x-rays and we've related it to a cancer that we understand more in the modern day.
Absolutely.
But you need two completely separate fields to advance to then connect the dots later on.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so complicated to give sound answers on new scientific discoveries.
Absolutely.
For some reason came up a lot when it came to bone tumors and bone disease and stuff. And it wasn't just a coincidence. Authors in the Routledge Handbook of Paleontology actually mentioned that hadrosaurs seem to have some sort of predisposition to tumor growth, specifically in the late Cretaceous. Maybe due to genetic reasons or the fact that they were prey species, so they seem to get injured more frequently, but who knows? One hadrosaur in the genus Telmatosaurus was found to have a facial tumor back in 2016. It was alive about 68 million years ago in the Valley of the Dinosaurs in what is now Romania, and was about 13 feet long. When it was first discovered, researchers noticed that the jaw was kind of warped due to outgrowths, and that was determined to be caused by ameloblastoma, which is a tissue growth that mammals and reptiles still get today.
Yeah.
They're non-cancerous, so not directly dangerous, but potentially growing to a size that could have blocked the airways or led to some sort of difficulty in proper body functioning. Another hadrosaur abnormality was a case of septic arthritis back in 2016. Something that affects mammals, birds, and reptiles still today, and is caused by a joint infection, usually after some sort of injury. In this case, the arthritis was found at the joint of the radius and ulna of a 70 million year old hadrosaur in what is now New Jersey. Scientists could see without any sort of equipment that the fossil was abnormal, and then a closer look with micro CT scans revealed the joint was fused and had some bony outgrowths all over it. They were able to rule out other possible causes like cancer or osteoporosis, and the severity of it suggested that the hadrosaur was dealing with it for a long time, likely limiting its ability to walk or use its arm. All right, let's move on to something different. Like malaria. If we had to rank diseases from favorites to least favorites, I think malaria would probably be at the bottom towards the least favorite of all time.
Probably.
I don't know what a favorite disease would be. I tried to look up best disease on Google, but best disease is actually a disease that affects your retinas. So I got nothing there. If you can think of a favorite disease, let me know in the comments. Maybe there's one that makes you bounce really high.
Okay. You got one?
No, Jesus.
You don't have a best disease?
No, do you?
No.
I'm more on the physical violence side, not the pathogens. I'm not into that.
I have big titty disease.
And what discomfort or disruption of your organism's, operation does the fat titty cause?
Well, it makes walking around really difficult.
And so it's a disease.
Yeah, and sleeping on my stomach.
Got it. Okay, if I'm gonna text that to a girl and get sexual harassment charges.
My professional opinion, you suffer from big titty.
And then just show a meme of a doctor writing a note. All
right, I'm gonna shut up. Back to what I was saying. Malaria, I'm certain you're familiar with it, is a horrible disease carried by mosquitoes that can infect a variety of different vertebrate animals. For example, the malaria that infects humans kills over 400,000 people a year. There's also avian malaria that has played a major role in the extinction of many birds in Hawaii in recent decades. Different kinds of malaria have evolved to infect different vertebrate hosts that are carried by a specific Anopheline mosquito, a certain genus of mosquitoes. And some of them, out of the 460 species, can carry malaria. Malaria was originally thought to have evolved relatively recently, like 15,000 to 8 million years ago. But a study published in 2016 by entomologist George Pointer Jr. suggests it evolved way earlier, at least 100 million years ago, with the first vertebrate hosts likely being reptiles, including the dinosaurs. By the way, George Pointer is a researcher at my alma mater, Oregon State University. OSU is consistently coming out with cool research on prehistoric shit. Just banger after banger. All right. Okay, so what was his evidence for this? Well, Pointer and his team were able to identify an insect trapped in amber from 100 million years ago.
I remember this study.
I've seen this one. This is a classic.
That was infected with an ancient form of malaria. They were able to identify malarial oocysts all over it, which are part of the malaria life cycle. Only this insect was not a mosquito. It was a biting midge. So he and his team thought at the time that earlier forms of malaria were carried by biting midges, and later on, 20 million years ago, started using mosquitoes as the vector. But
if you guys are very interested in bugs, look up anything encased in amber. Amber keeps for so long and it preserves stuff so well. And a lot of research has been done on all the stuff preserved in there. It's so fascinating.
Yeah.
Then, in 2019, Pointer and his team found a mosquito with the same conditions. Trapped in amber from 100 million years ago, infected with an ancient form of malaria. Specific characteristics of the mosquito, like their antenna, the shape of their wings, the veins in their wings, and the shape of their abdomen suggested this was actually an early lineage of those Anopheline mosquitoes. So the modern condition of malaria being carried by this specific mosquito genus seems to actually be ancient as well. And both biting midges and mosquitoes were carrying malaria during the age of the dinosaurs. Well, the ultimate cause of the extinction of the dinosaurs was obviously the asteroid that I'm going to make a video about during the History of Life series. There's lots of evidence to suggest that many dinosaur lineages were actually going extinct over thousands of years before the asteroid event even occurred. What those extinctions were due to could be a lot of things. But many diseases, including malaria, obviously, were emerging during this time and could have played a role. We just don't have evidence of that. All right, so what about the sniffles that I mentioned at the beginning of the video? The living relatives of dinosaurs today, i.e. birds and reptiles, are known to suffer from the occasional case of the suds. So, one could assume dinosaurs did too. But how could you possibly know for sure? Respiratory disease affects lungs and soft tissues, which obviously are very rarely preserved. Well, just last year, in 2022, scientists described the fossil of a juvenile sauropod that seemed to have a case of air sacculitis, an inflammatory respiratory disease that birds have today. The sauropod, named Dolly by scientists in 1990, was alive about 150 million years ago in what is now Montana. The fossil includes a pretty complete skull and the first 7 neck vertebrae. So how did they know that Dolly got sick? Obviously, sauropods were really fucking big. Dolly, for example, would have been about 60 feet long as a juvenile. And some of the largest sauropods that we know of could get to 130 feet long. Their necks were absolutely ridiculous. And the thought of them being able to hold up all that weight probably seems outrageous. Look at how big their bones were. Well, sauropods actually had, drum roll please, hollow bones. Yep. And a network of air sacs, like modern birds.
Wait a minute.
Never considered this.
That answers so many questions.
Yeah, never considered this.
I just went through and shown you, look at the size of, how do they walk? It doesn't make sense. You were like, well, big muscles. I'm like, I guess I just don't know how strong muscles are.
Yeah.
But hollow bones makes a lot more sense.
Right.
And now I know how we know so much about them. Because with hollow bones, it leaves a lot more evidence of what went on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like with birds.
And a network of air sacs, like modern birds, making their necks lighter than they appear to be.
Yeah.
These air sacs had attachments to the vertebra in the neck. So when the air sacs got infected, it left evidence in the bones as lesions or scarring or other damage. It does the same to birds today, which have a similar setup.
Yeah, that's how
and
you
that
would
is
know.
what scientists saw when the bones were CT scanned. Clear signs of an infection that started in the air sacs and left a mark on the neck bones, and all in areas where the vertebra would have been attached to the air sacs. So it clearly points to a respiratory infection. More specifically, a type of air saculitis, based on the evidence. This would have given Dolly symptoms like weight loss, coughing, a runny nose, a fever, heavy breathing, and this likely caused, or at least contributed somewhat to her early death, which is sad. But luckily, Dolly's remains have given scientists some really cool insight on something that is otherwise not documented well at all in the fossil record.
How would you
Another
know?
one you might not expect to show up in the fossil record is tuberculosis.
What the
That's
hell?
right, bitch. In 2018, scientists in Poland found possible evidence of tuberculosis in a marine reptile called Pronusticosaurus, alive about 245 million years ago. The fossil specimen was typical of their kind. They had flat skulls, long necks, and long, rounded teeth. But their ribs were unusual. They had lesions all over them that look similar to those that show up on the ribs of infected animals today. It mainly infects the lungs, but can also spread to other parts of the body like kidneys and even the brain, and obviously can impact the ribs. There was a list of reasons why these lesions could have been there. It might have been cancers or other infections, or maybe pneumonia, but maybe the tuberculosis caused the pneumonia. But they were able to rule those out by looking at different x-rays, histologies, CT scans. Tuberculosis seems to be the most likely cause, but this one is still technically up for debate. If it does end up being tuberculosis, this would push back the earliest case by like hundreds of millions of years. Before examining this fossil, the earliest record was in a marsupial from 3 million years ago. So, big, if true. Hopefully, we will get more answers soon. I know that talking about diseases can be a huge buzzkill. I found myself getting kind of bummed out while doing research for this video. But God, it's so cool that with the technology that we have, we can identify such small aspects of an individual's life from hundreds of millions of years ago. You know, that like connect us to them as individuals rather than groups.
Yeah, and they're gonna do that through my YouTube vids. They're like, look at this freaking insane guy.
And who knows what we're going to be able to discover in like 5-10 years, now that we're getting an idea of what to look for. All of this just adds to the knowledge that we have of these diseases today and could potentially move us in the right direction for, you know, different treatments or possibly cures.
Right.
And that is so sick. All right, this week I'm only going to feature one question in the Q&A because it needs its own spotlight. I don't know if you were messing with me, but your tone and the detail you included makes me think you weren't. So, let me just read the whole thing.
Here we go. Buckle up.
Get my phone out. Hey, Lindsay. Question. On the topic of bugs getting into places they're not supposed to go, or places we humans would much prefer that they don't go, I recently had an ear canal infection and is still recovering. And all of a sudden, centipedes in my house are crawling into my ear during the night. It's annoying, it's painful, it's freaky. One of them bit me with their mandibles, so now the ear is hurting from both the infection and the venom. I've had to buy this giant earmuff thing just to sleep. So, what the fuck? The centipedes have never invaded my ears prior to this, and they have not touched my other ear before, during, and since. Did the infection lead to some sort of scent that they might have mistaken for food or whatever? Answer if you can, sister. Thanks.
Bro,
leave your house.
He's got rotting flesh in his ears, and the centipedes go, I want to consume him. He's dying.
Leave your house.
I have questions for you. First off.
What?
I have never come across a house centipede before, but I would like to know where you live, where it's just
my first
a normal occurrence to have a centipede infestation to the point where you're aware of the fact that they usually leave you alone. So you know they're usually there. They just don't usually go in your ear. And you just seem a little bit calm, you know? A little too calm. I don't have an answer for you. I'm gonna assume that it's what you said. They do like humid, dark environments, so maybe your ear is suddenly appealing to them.
Ew.
I don't know what to do about that. I don't know what you should do about that. I'm at a loss. So if you could get back to me with some more answers, I would very much appreciate that.
We need more detail.
If you could get back to me, I'd appreciate it. You ask me for help. When you get back to me for help, I'll be on a help.
If you have a weird animal you want identified or a question you want answered, let me know.
Oh my God. Let me tell you something.
No, hell no.
If Centipedes suddenly started crawling into my ears.
They start finding your ear appealing.
But I'm saying start crawling into my ears.
Yeah.
They bite my ears.
Yeah.
That might be my 13th reason.
If you become the bug whisperer, go straight to the circus. Set up an overnight camera. I'd watch every day as they try to crawl into your orifices.
No.
He's like, yeah, I hope they buy some earmuff things because they just keep crawling on me, trying to get in my ear.
If that is a true thing, if that is real, I am so sorry.
They do make individual ear cuffs that are very comfortable.
Right.
But also ear plugs would solve your problem.
But does that stop it stops them from getting in your ear? But does it stop them from crawling towards your ear, from crawling on you?
It would probably.
What if you just wake up and the centipede is just standing there like,
touching the side of your ear like, I want to get in. Let me in. Delicious flesh. Tuberculosis being old. Very cool.
Yeah, this is a really interesting video in regards to diseases.
Yeah, man. It's also a really interesting video about, different chest infections.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, diseases being one part, but the infections also being the same part, but different.
Yeah. Maybe I'm descended from dinosaurs, and that's why I get sick so often.
Well, when you die, I'll make sure that they go scan your body, and then they compare it to dinosaur bones.
Post-mortem CTs and all that, please.
So, hey, that was so interesting. Trust me, I definitely knew it was going to be a little floaty with some of the parts.
Right.
Extrapolating. But what I really like about it is the taking from one part of science, looking at avian flus, comparing it to dinosaur sicknesses. They are very, very similar, and we can come to very solid conclusions based on that. I'm fascinated about that. In the next Lindsay video, I'll be watching with my wife. We'll be surfing through time, learning the truths about the universe and the world with Lindsay Nikole.